Hey, 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 humanity, and welcome back to another episode of Free to Just Be, the podcast where I have been using my personal awakening journey to inspire, educate, and gather people and help people connect with themselves, with each other, with God, and with the living, breathing world around them. And it's through my embodied experiences, my daily Earth School lessons that I have been sharing for about 3.5 years. So if this resonates with you, I ask that you please just pause and hit the like button so that other people can find this information. And I appreciate you giving me some of your precious time. It's our greatest commodity. And what I've been doing over the last several years is just quite authentically and rawly sharing some of the things that I have been doing on this dance of transformation that we all find ourselves on. I talk about the ascension journey, I talk about the energetic aspects of it. I have started my YouTube channel and I share some gardening videos as well, because my husband and I are on a mission to create a food forest on our property so that eventually we can feed many, many people. And we are novices, and I'm showing how that whole process is happening as well. The other aspect of my mission is I am a moving meditation coach, and I teach a Tai Chi based moving meditation called Release and Revive, where I teach people how to, I don't want to say I teach, I share my practice and show people how to move energy through their body, which is what energy is supposed to do. It's supposed to continually move. And it's when we grab a hold and attach to thoughts or emotional loop-de-loops that we go through that we cause our own dis-ease. So that's my threefold mission here on the planet. And I welcome you in to Free to Just Be, and I hope that you will enjoy our conversation today. Today, I want to talk about division, um, and to open, I just want to share a personal observation that I was having all day yesterday. Yesterday was Father's Day, and I have done a whole series on being the observer. And it generally begins by observing others, people not close to you, maybe even the TV. You're beginning to observe and notice differences and similarities and patterns in your own life, right? So I've been an observer for almost 2 decades now. And I was observing some patterns and pain and division that my husband was going through on Father's Day. And we're going to circle back around to that, but I want to talk about how division causes such suffering and how the matrix merry-go-round, you can put all sorts of titles on that. I have always coined the phrase the matrix merry-go-round because it involves so many entities, systems, programs, false beliefs, propaganda. And some people call it the deep state, some call it the darkness. But it's what we all, as humanity as a whole, find ourselves involved in. And I call it the matrix merry-go-round. And the goal, the desire of everybody's heart is to live free. Thus, my title of this podcast, Free to Just Be. Be what? Be exactly who you are. Not controlled, not told what to think what to say, how to look. And the world is consistently, on a daily basis, more and more beginning to wake up and observe and take that red pill, like Keanu Reeves talked about in that Matrix movie back in the day. And even that in itself is all by design. Everything that they are doing to us, they show us through media, through movies, and it's quite amazing when you look at that aspect of it. But I want to focus on the point of division and how that causes so much suffering in our journey through this human existence that we find ourselves in. And I'll come back and bring that home to what I observed yesterday, and which, by the way, I've experienced every Mother's Day. And parents, you might relate to this. You begin dreading those days, Mother's or Father's Day. Some of us are not looking forward to it. Now, with social media, it's even more prevalent to compare, to feel less than, to see everybody else posting all these beautiful pictures and gifts and ways they were blessed. And it becomes a point of suffering for many, many people. And I'm just using Mother's or Father's Day as an example. So let's dive into these tactics of division and why they seem to be so prevalent today. And I'm going to refer back to some of my notes here that I've written. So if you see me looking away, it's because I'm looking at some of the stuff that I wrote down. So it wasn't always. Families have always had conflict. I mean, even if you're a Bible reader, you know, the first conflict in a family between brothers ended up one of the brothers killing the other. Okay, so there's always been family conflict. That isn't the question. That's a given. There's always going to be disagreements within a family, but it's it changed dramatically because, you see, back in the 1800s and prior, family was it. I mean, you got your wisdom, you got your support, you learned, you everything about society was wrapped around the family unit. Okay, and that all began to change during the Industrial Revolution. And that was when most people began to leave the home. You know, it used to be everything was radiated out of the home. Farming, whatever talent or ability you had, it was still based in your home. And everybody in your family operated as such, right? Well, then the Industrial Revolution in the early 1800s was a major turning point. People left their farms and their villages for what? For factories and cities. And families began to be more mobile. And so there was more travel. And for the first time, large institutions, governments, factories, schools, newspapers began shaping people's beliefs rather than the stories and the mores and the different uh, lineage and you know, it used to be, there was a time when people operated in that simple fashion of just passing down recipes and stories and abilities and trades, and it was all about family. And the family in the 1800s started to become not the primary source of all of that. And might I add right here that even back then in the 1800s, there were those who were running the show, so to speak. I mean, we can take it back. All right, let's just go back to biblical times. In biblical times, our deep state would have been called the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And a deep state, or the controllers of the matrix merry-go-round, are nothing more than people who want to be in charge. If you have a controller tendency, and we all do, we all want to be in control. And we should be able to make choices and be able to control our own world. And this is what began to happen thousands of years ago. Back from the Garden of Eden, there was always somebody, dare I say, remember the most beautiful angel of all, wanted to be God. And he got thrown out, and thus the dark side came into be. And that's a whole nother topic. And everything that I share, I want to blanket it with the encouragement that all of us, Humanityville, all of us must and hopefully will begin to desire to resurrect our own inquisition. In other words, don't take what anybody says verbatim. That's what got us into these messes that we find ourselves in now. We have allowed somebody else to think for us, and then we have just said, oh, yeah, well, that's what I believe. Well, is it? So see, that's the start of the awakening journey. You start to question everything, resurrecting inquisition. So I'm just touching upon some of my opinions and some of the history that I pulled up and took notes about in regards to how division, especially in families, began. So let's move up from the 1800s and go to the 1900s. And that was when the next big shift happened. Radio, movies, and television. And even back then, when it was all black and white, and when TV came in, look, I'm going to date myself. We had a black and white. It looked like a piece of furniture in our living room on four legs, and it had the big tube in the back. And, there was like three stations. And it ended at like 11 o'clock or midnight with the national anthem, and then it would go to static. Okay. So, yes, I'm telling my age right now. And I so appreciate there are so many people that are my age that have finally resurrected their wisdom. Because you see, as I've shared many times, I have lived a Jerry Springer ringer life. And if you're under 50, maybe you don't even know who Jerry Springer is or was or what his show is about. In other words, I've lived a very tumultuous life full of many, many earth lessons. I have gone through and I'm going to do a show about that here in the next day or so. But anyway, many people that are in what some people would say the senior age. Age is just a matter of perspective. I've just begun. I am 65, and I've got at least 60 more years because I have just figured things out. And now, as I'm trying to share, many of us in my age group are realizing that everything that we went through was not for us only. It's time that we share our wisdom, that we begin to connect people back together. Um, there are many, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but there are many people in the younger generations that by design have walked away from their families. Look, back in the early 80s, I did that. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that occurred. So now we're in the 1800s, and TV began, and the rise of mass media. And what did that do? Well, people increasingly received their worldview from national news and media rather than what? Local communities and their family. So people were starting to broaden their horizon without recognizing that what was coming out of that boob tube, okay? It was called that for a reason, because it like satiated our need for dopamine while it was doping us down, right? Dumbing us down. And the controllers of the matrix, the dark side, or whatever you want to call them, the matrix merry-go-round is very patient. And so for centuries, they have been doing kind of like the frog in the pot concept, little by little by little. And the frog didn't realize it was being cooked from the inside out, correct? Well, that's kind of what the Matrix has been doing for us, or to us, what we have been allowing, I should say. So, in fact, one of the notes I wrote down is one of the pioneers, this is in the early 1900s, one of the pioneers of modern public relations, Edward Bernays. Look it up. He openly wrote about using psychology to influence public opinion and consumer behavior. Imagine that, excuse me. And thus it really began. They began to feed us via movies and entertainment. Oh, how we want to be entertained, don't we, humanity? We want to be fed the answers. We want to feel good. We want to avoid, if at all possible, any work, right? And media and entertainment became their massive vehicle to begin to change our minds towards what they wanted us to believe, which is why now we are all going, wait a minute, wait a minute. I don't believe this, right? And the waking up has come in waves. There are those of us that have been awake for 40 plus years. There are those of us that have been awake 20 plus years, and 10, and 5, and 5 months ago, right? Then came the Cultural Revolution in the 60s and the 70s, right? And this began a major acceleration of division. We're leading this all back towards, it's always been about division. Divide, destroy, kill. Divide, destroy, kill. Those are therefore 3 points of contention. That is what they're, not the contention, it's their tools, it's their method, it's their methodology is really what it is. So in the 60s and the 70s, that generation, including myself, lived through the civil rights struggle, the Vietnam War, feminist movements, okay? So all of that was pulling apart. Now, families used to be like this, right? Families were it. And by the 60s or 70s, it was coming apart massively, right? It was the sexual revolution. It was the counterculture movements. And most people began to discover direct conflict with their parents. And thus, the division of families began to get wider and wider and wider. It wasn't necessarily bad or good at that point, but it did bring in some important social reforms and deep family tensions as well. Because perhaps for the first time in America, large numbers of young people were consciously rejecting many of the traditions of their parents. What parents considered sacred. Like I was raised that it was taboo. Sex before marriage was taboo. And then the sexual revolution came in and everything turned upside down, right? So let's go a little further. The 1990s to the present. And there's no doubt in my mind that this was the biggest shift of all. The internet and social media, they don't merely inform people. No. They actively divide people into groups. This is when the labeling of the generations. I'm a boomer. Are you a Gen Z? Are you a millennial? And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And this is what we've allowed. And so much division. I will take it right home to my home. My husband and I have 7 children. He took on a single mom with 5 children 19 years ago. And to this day, although my husband has prayed for my kids every single day, and he loves my kids, our kids, there's still not a full acceptance of him. Now, of course, there's many reasons behind that. They were independent of having a male figure in their life for most of their life. I had some very bad picks prior to my current husband, and there was a lot of trauma that happened. We all had trauma. Every one of us has had trauma, but a lot of that trauma was by design. And so because of the way we believe, now it's been 8 years now. One of our children literally just said, I don't like your political views. I don't like your views on the spiritual world. I just don't like your attitude. I don't like anything about you, and I don't want to have anything to do with you. Now that is the ultimate kick in the stomach, in the heart. And yet this one that we love so much is still estranged from us. And I do believe that it comes back to what we're discussing. Division by design. It's always been by design. Because divided we fall, united we stand. Hello? So, and a lot of people on the awakening journey, it may be something that painful that wakes them up, right? So when the digital revolution came in, and algorithms began to basically run our lives. Algorithms tend to show us content that reinforces what we believe. So all right, let's just take the controversy of politics right now, or let's just go back. All right, back when Obama was president, and we were getting ready to vote for Trump, and it had nothing to do with race. It had nothing to do with anything but what we saw in the government. But you see, if one of your children was an Obama supporter, guess what kind of algorithms, what kind of information, what kind of post, what will they start seeing in their feed over and over again? The verbiage, the propaganda, the facts and or the lies of anything to do with that particular party. And the same is true with somebody back then that was conservative and was going to vote for Trump. And so what happens is you have like this closed loop. You don't even have the ability to enter into any other thought patterns. And this is what they do. And people don't realize, well, I haven't seen that in the news. Well, why? Because you have commented on the news that you wanted to see, and now that's the only news you're seeing. And people don't realize that we're targeted. We are targeted not only for purchases, but we are targeted for our mind, right? They want us dumbed down. They want us to believe what they tell us only, because if we think, we can't be controlled, see? So, and it just seems so much worse, the divisional tactics today. Why? Because people move away from family more often. There are fewer multi-generational households, although that's debatable because there's a lot of people that are going back to the old ways. And that is kind of where I fit in. I am trying to, and I don't want to say trying, I am on a daily basis sharing community, sharing connection, reconnection. And in my opinion, the first connection you have to have is with yourself. You have to get back into your body. You have to, I love the last two quote, you have to get back to your heart, you have to lose your mind. And Wookiefoot did a great song about that as well. All the answers are right inside. I firmly believe that. And our job is to remove all the veils of unconsciousness. We have unconsciously allowed all of this crap into our field, and it's poisoned us, and it's caused massive division and massive suffering. So now let me just take it back around to the current status and why I have been pondering this topic of division causing such suffering. If you followed me before, or if you're new, you can go back and you can literally see the evolutional change in my own life from day one to now. I was pretty militant and angry and when I first started. And I'm not like that anymore. I'm much more centered and grounded and much more at peace. And it's, I just lost my train of thought, but that's the beauty of being free to just be. You can do that and not be perfect. I mean, to me, if you would have told me even 5 years ago that I would have allowed myself to get before a camera, I don't know what I'm doing video wise. I and I am so comfortable in my skin now that it does not matter to me one iota that I don't have a perfect background. I'm still in my little makeshift office. I've got my blinds wide open because it's been raining all day, and I want to be able to hear and be able to look out my window. I don't have a perfect background yet, although I have art from one of my dear friends and students. And I don't have any makeup on. Heck, truth be known, here's the authentic part, okay? I haven't even taken a shower yet today. Oh my God. And I'm online. We are free to just be who we are, folks. We are. And the more people recognize that authenticity and genuine people are so much better than perfection, because the truth is, we are all perfectly imperfect. So, to go back to the division part, I watched my husband struggle on Father's Day, and it's a lot easier to observe somebody else suffering and instead of going through it yourself, right? And as I observed him throughout the day, I, of course, was going retro back to Mother's Day. And try as you might, as a parent, you don't want to have expectations. But in your heart of hearts, I mean, yes, as parents, you and I will definitely make many, many mistakes, some more than others. I certainly made way more than I feel like my parents made. But emotional neglect, that was a biggie. That came into play. Oh, it began probably in the 70s when moms had to leave and uh, a lot of moms weren't home anymore. Large families. I mean, I had 5 kids, right? And I did the best I could. I had a lot of years where I was a single parent. But now, with grown ass children, now you're beginning to see the ramifications of your parenting. Oh, buddy, diapers are a cakewalk. That's the easy part. And for me personally, I emotionally disconnected from my family when I was I was 13. I was already rebelling a lot against my dad. And then my dad passed away when I was 13 years old, and I lost it. I was gone, gone, gone. I was gone. And he was a police officer, and I spent 10 or 12 years being very, very good at being very, very bad. In fact, anything that my dad would have disliked is what I did. And because of that, I emotionally disconnected from my very support system, my 5 brothers and sisters, my mother, um, and it it brought a lot of detriment in my development. And so I look back, and these are things that I had to sit with, look at. Look, the awakening journey isn't a cakewalk. It is very, very difficult, very daunting. And this is why the tactics of distraction, of social media, of entertainment is so attractive to us as humanity. We love the dopamine feel goods. We don't want to deal with our suffering. We don't want to deal with the causes of our suffering. We don't want to look in the mirror and say, oh, wow, I did that. I caused that. I allowed that. I hurt these people. And yet, that is where true awakening begins. You have to look at yourself. And so here I am observing my husband, who is attempting to have no expectations. And, it's particularly rough when one of your children has already told you, I don't want to have anything to do with you, and cut you off right at the heart, and cut you off of every social media, and you have pined away, you have cried buckets of tears, you have prayed, you have railed, you have prayed some more, you believe and receive that eventually there's going to be unity, and yet 8 years go by. It's a tough walk to be in that stage of parenting, right? And because my husband Roger is a step parent, and came into my children's lives when my youngest was like 10. And when we first met Roger. And at that point, my children really ran me. Um, there was no male figure in my younger son's lives. And anyway, when Roger entered and tried to be an authority figure, it did not go over very well. Now, does this sound familiar to how many single mom families, how many step families do we have now? How many mixed families do we have? How many same sex families do we have now? And every one of those comes with their own sets of conflict. And we can't give up humanity. We have to work towards multiplication instead of division, because united we stand, divided we fall. And so I'm observing my husband yesterday, and it was so sad. I Come May, I do not feel completely free in my skin and in my emotional body until after Mother's Day. Honestly, honestly, I dread it. I hope as I may to not have expectations. I always have expectations. I still have expectations on my birthdays that one day one of our 7 kids will give me a surprise party, for example. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but I have not had a quote unquote birthday party since I was probably 6 or 7 years old. But they're living their own life. And I used to tell my kids, every day with me is a day I am trying to show you to live without me. How about that? How warped was that? Well, it was warped because I left my home emotionally when I was 13, and I ran away from that home, packed up a backpack, stole money from my mom, and hitched out of the country on the Brooklyn Bridge with my then boyfriend, who became my first husband, when I just barely turned 18. And baby, I tell you, I was still a kid. And, 9 months later, I was a kid having kids, right? And this is what was done to us by design. And so all the support systems are gone, and you hope to shout. You go through all the years of the diapers and the terrible twos, and I homeschooled, and then I had to put them into school, and all the ups and downs. And as a parent, I don't think there's any parent, unless you're extremely cold-hearted, that says, "Oh, I'm so glad it's over, and just go and have your life, and I'm done." Now, I imagine that there are parents like that, but that was never my desire. My desire was to have an adult relationship with my kids, to enjoy life with them, to be part of their lives. But yet, in the big picture, if I sat down and I looked at my life, what did I exhibit to my children? I didn't have relationship with my siblings and my mother. I moved 2,000 miles away because I felt so unaccepted, which is all, again, remember, we are having a conversation about division by design. The design is divide so that there's suffering, so that we can, as the parasitic energy that we are, we can feed on their suffering. We can feed on their fear. We can feed on their feelings of rejection and guilt and shame. Oh, they love all those negative vibrations. That's what the dark side feeds on. So see, we have been having our energy siphoned off for centuries. And now people are waking up and saying, wait a minute, I don't want to live like this. So to just close it off today, we had my husband's son show up, and my husband was so hopeful. I mean, I watched him. He didn't enter into a lot of activity that, we were kind of thinking we were going to do some yard work. We thought about running into town. We had some errands to do. And I watched him. I was observing. None of that was really happening. He didn't say so until the end of the day. But no, he was holding out. He was leaving space for his children, all of his children. We have 7 children, and there's been no differentiation between us as parents. All 7 are our children, right? My 5 are his 2 are mine. We together have 7 children, right? And he was holding out for something. Now, he knew one of his children was probably not going to reach out at all because that was already cut off. And we still, to this day, on a daily basis, every single morning, pray for that unity and for that restoration of that relationship. But he was holding out and hopeful that maybe a day would be spent. Time spent is massive. Time in a bottle means that song by Jim Croce. If you're too young, look it up. It's an incredible song, Time in a Bottle. And it means so much when you're a Grammy, when your children are all grown. Our youngest child is going to be 35 this year. No, our youngest will be 30? Yeah, 30. So they're all grown. And technically, we should but here we are. We still desire connection. We still desire, hey, what are you doing? Hey, and when none of that comes, the dark side, the matrix merry-go-round wins. And some of our children are old enough now to have grown children. Our oldest grandchild is 23 this year, 23. And our youngest grandchild just turned 2. And so the older kids have discovered some of the same things that I was just sharing with you about Mother's and Father's Day. There's estrangement happening with the second generation. Why? And that's where I'm going to close. Ponder it. Division is by design. And it's my job and your job as part of Humanityville. We want to get back to Humanityville because right now we're living in an illusion, in a play, and we need to get back to truly living like human beings, connected, no color, no political affiliation. We're just all one people called humans. And that's what we have to awake, ascend up towards, to awaken that Christ consciousness again, where multiplication is prevalent rather than division. So if any of this resonated with you, and if you're listening in just earbuds on Spotify because you like audio podcasts, thank you. Thank you so much. Many of my listeners have been listening on Spotify or on other apps where it's just audio. But there are new folks on my YouTube channel, Free2JustB on YouTube. And thank you for spending some time. And I don't know, maybe it's scary to see Teresa Marie ambassador of Chi on your screen. Yes, the former Terry Wilson, which, that's just a nickname for Teresa. And back in the day when I first started this podcast, I called myself Terry Wilson, the hippie freak of the South. Why? Because that was my story. I was the hippie renegade freak that felt unaccepted, cast out, and quite the rebel. I'm still a rebel, only now I'm a rebel against anything to do with the dark side and the matrix merry-go-round, and I am creating a community that wants to come back together, that wants to support one another, that wants to be united. And I do that by sharing breath work, by sharing movement, by sharing my podcast, my gardening videos, and so much more to come. So if this resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channels, because the more people that do that, the more people will see information like this. And I know that there are people out there that resonates with me. And maybe you know somebody that will too. So I would so appreciate it if you share this information. And as always, I close letting you know that my belief is, and my prayer for you is, that you have the greatest energy with the most vibrant health. And I reverse that. I actually always say, I pray for your greatest health and most vibrant energy. And of course, peace. Until next time.